But I was all like, I ended up reading the synopsis of this and was like, oh no, hunty, this ain't for me. You should read this. You really should. This ain't it, sis. I was all like, it's time, baby. But there ain't no beach reading, baby. Hello, loves. Okay, it is time for a reading wrap up. And I don't actually know how I'm going to be doing these, so bear with me over the next couple of months as I figure out the best way to go about it. I thought it would be fun to give you kind of a little update in what's going on that kind of relates to what I'm reading, why I'm reading, and all of that stuff. So I ended up reading like 15 books in August, which is a big deal for me because the like months prior to that, I think I was like barely reading 5 or 6. So this was great. One of the big reasons it went from so little to so much so quickly is because August is the first full month that I've spent in my new house. I had a major life thing where I bought my first house. I moved to a new state, which is also a big life event, and I bought a house, and I still cannot friggin' believe it. I've been dedicating a bunch of time to reading. It's just been absolutely phenomenal. So that has been pretty awesome. I did also start my first reading journal, which I'm really excited about. I guess technically I have attempted reading journals in the past, but I never really got past the first like entry. So the fact that I have an entire month's worth of entries in here is absolutely phenomenal. I am trying to keep it pretty simple and doodly. I am an illustrator, so it makes sense for me to do kind of sketches for the different books that I'm doing and just kind of keep it simple since I don't want it to get too thick, as I do plan on putting it on my bookshelves after I fill this bad boy up. Before we get into it, I would love to know what your favorite books of the month were. So for August, or even right now, doesn't really matter. Also, any surprises. Did you get any book that was way better than you thought it was going to be, or kind of a dud when you thought it was going to be absolutely phenomenal? Because I have some of that. Now, on to the books that I have read. I did a couple of reading vlogs. We're gonna go over all of the books regardless, but I just want to let you know in case you want to know more about the books that we're gonna go through. So I did a dedicated romance reading vlog, which didn't go the way I expected it to, so that was a lot of fun. And I should mention that the ratings that I do in these wrap-ups are my revised ratings, so it will be interesting to see how they differ from what I initially put them in the reading vlogs. And I'm actually not going to tell you what my original ratings are because I think it's a little bit more fun that way. But yeah, and then I also did a dedicated POC fantasy where I focused on fantasy novels by women of color. Well, actually, that wasn't actually intentional. It just turned out that all of them are by female authors. I ended up reading 5 books, and we will also go over all of those. And then I think these might kind of end up in a couple of other vlogs, but I don't entirely know. You'll have to wait and see. So starting off, I think I'm gonna try and sort of do it by least to favorite and then also by vlog to some degree. Okay, and so for my least favorite book, it would be The Book of Two Ways. And this is about a woman after having a near-death experience. Instead of thinking about her husband or her daughter like she thought she would in her dying moments, she thought about a man from like 20 years ago or something like that. And she decides, you know what? Instead of going home to my loving family, I'm going to go across the world and go pretend that I am an archaeologist for however long to figure out my feelings and why this ended up happening. Now, as much as I kind of dislike that, I only got this book because it was a book club subscription box. You know, I wouldn't have picked it for myself. I just wouldn't. It's not for me. There's nothing wrong with the book. The author is trying to tote the line between right and wrong, and I think that is a nice concept. I loved a lot of the like educational aspects and some of like the talks that she had with some of the other like archaeologists. Even also talking about her history with her husband. I thought that was nice as well. There were some parts that were really enjoyable. I even thought the twist was enjoyable, but overall this just wasn't for me. Like it's not my cup of tea. I don't want people toting that line because it's upsetting to me. And even though I think the book did the right thing, yeah, I just didn't have a good time, is all I can say. I just didn't enjoy it. So 2 stars. Now, another book that I kind of didn't enjoy, but also enjoyed and definitely was a higher star rating for me would be Tyler Johnson Was Here by J. Coles. Now, this is about police brutality, basically, and it is a strong book. It is an uncomfortable book. It points out how bad it is for some people and how extreme it can be in some cases. And I think it was really well done for the most part. There is a kind of like a romance that's kind of thrown in here that I thought was done kind of awkwardly and wasn't necessarily necessary for the storytelling, so I didn't love that as much as I would have liked, but I still ended up giving this like a high 3-star, low 4-star because I do think the message was strong and it did make me uncomfortable in the ways that the book was trying to make me uncomfortable, so that definitely had it going for itself. Then I think the next books that would be fitting, I don't actually have physical copies, so both of these are mysteries or in that kind of mystery genre. The first one is House on Fire, and this is not the book that I thought I was reading. I actually thought I was reading a book that I had on my shelf also called House on Fire, and so I was a little bit confused when I kind of got into it and was all like, I wasn't expecting this. So this book was about a really high up family who is in the pharmaceutical industry and is kind of pushing a really addictive pharmaceutical drug that has basically ruined a lot of people's lives, and one of the daughters feels pretty guilty about all of this and kind of wants to expose the business to kind of right her conscience and force her dad to make better decisions. So she hires a detective to try and go undercover and find some documents that prove all of this stuff so she can kind of blackmail her dad into doing the right thing. And in the process of trying to find these documents, another undercover detective ends up getting murdered. And even though our main detective that all of the story is told by decides that he's going to, I'm gonna figure out what happened because like my friend was murdered and like you're not gonna stop me. So he continues to try and uncover things. There's some twists, there's some turns. Overall, it was a good time, but it was more of a 3-star good time. So not a new favorite, but not mad that I read it. Now, similarly, but that I liked a little bit more would be a Specter of Justice by Mark de Castric. Now I actually do own this copy, but I'm lending it out to my little brother, so I don't physically have it with me at the moment. This is another, what is it called? Detector for hire or whatever. But we have our detector who is working for a really big court case and something goes wrong, and then years later they end up having this kind of like fund situation to try and make money for some of the people affected. And during this, there are some things that go wrong and some murders that end up happening, and our main detective, oh, I was saying detector, wasn't I? I was like, why does that sound weird? It's because it was the wrong word, sweetie. Anyway, our main detective's friend is looking real guilty, and he's all like, you know what, this doesn't smell right, so I'm going to try and do some undercover detecting myself and see what's actually happening here. Now, this was a lot of fun. I actually really enjoyed this one. I did like that even though I'm pretty sure the author is a white author, that one of the main supportive characters was a black character, and that kind of made me happy to see that representation. And just overall, I think the book was a good time. It was a good time. Another 3 stars, but admittedly more enjoyable than the last one. Moving on to a 5-star, because I actually had a couple of 5 stars this month. Not enough for how many books that I read, but I did have a good time, so it's okay. But the first 5-star that we're going to talk about is actually Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie's We Should All Be Feminists. This is a little short essay that is based off of the TED Talk that she did. You can look it up. The TED Talk, I highly recommend you actually listening to it because her performing it is just chef's kiss. I absolutely love it. This isn't the first time that I've watched it or listened to an audio of it or read the book, so this was a reread for me and I love it so much. Still a 5-star, I still highly recommend, still had a good time. And this time I just fully read it and I could still hear her in my head kind of performing it based off of the TED Talk because I think she did a great job. And if you don't know, Beyonce used an audio clip from the TED Talk in one of her songs and I cannot remember which one it is, but it's fire. I think she did a good job incorporating it, good sound bites. So you should read this. You really should. Next up. Now this one isn't a 5-star, but it is a favorite. I am super biased and also not biased at the same time. So that would be Anne of West Philly by Ivy Noel Weir and illustrated by my friend Maisha Haynes, who is super talented, and I have been putting off reading this because of the move, but have been wanting to so bad. So as soon as I kind of uncovered it from my book boxes, I was all like, it's time, baby! And I'm glad. So I have never read Anne of Green Gables, which is what this is based off of, and I love it. It's such a cute and adorable, heartwarming story. I think it was really well done. I think it shows off some of her skills. It was still so cozy, cute, and enjoyable. But if you do want to see magic happen, I will say check out her webcomic, The Substitutes, because chef's fucking kiss. I'm so jealous of how skilled she is, and this book just made me smile. Like, it's so good. She's so talented and this just made me really happy. And obviously the author did a great job kind of putting this together and making me smile and just feel good and enjoy the character and want more from it. Like, I want more. I want more. Even though I'm pretty sure this is a standalone, I would be happy if we got more. High 4 stars, love this. So on to all of the romance that I ended up reading in order of least favorite to favorite. It's a little bit hard because I loved all of the books and I was not expecting it. I know, spoiler alert for the vlog if you haven't seen it. I mean, there's more to it. You will still enjoy it, I think, but was I not expecting it? Okay, so the first one we're going to talk about is Instructions for Dancing by Nicola Yoon. This is a story about grief that I wasn't necessarily expecting. It's done in a kind of cutesy Hallmark feeling way. All the best things of a Hallmark movie, which I thought was really interesting. It was just kind of like the dialogue and some of the interactions and just like some of the cute cheesiness was done in such a warm, fun way. I liked the writing. We have our main character whose father basically cheated on her mom. Okay, and she's aware of this, and so now she doesn't believe in love anymore. She doesn't believe in love, she's jaded, she's angry, and she's hurting. And while trying to kind of get rid of all of her used to be favorite romance books because now they do nothing for her, she ends up getting this Instructions for Dancing book, and in the process ends up getting a magical gift where the first time she sees two people in love kiss, she basically gets a vision of their entire relationship from start to finish, and she hates it. So she's desperate to try and get rid of it. So she tries to discover where the book came from, and it brings her to a school teaching dancing, and she ends up kind of gets roped into helping the school out and partnering up with, I think it's like the grandson of the owners, and obviously feelings ensue. There is a lot to it. It was super adorable. A lot happens. It's emotional, but it was a fun time. I liked it. I think Nicola Yoon did a good job. 4 stars, absolutely loved this. Next up, we have my girl, Jasmine Guillory, and I'm gonna tell you, this was kind of like 3rd time's a charm. If this ain't it, it ain't it, sis, because the last 2 books that I've read of her, I think it was one of the like wedding party books. I don't know if it was that one, but I think it was in that series. And then also Royal Holiday. I was let down so much by those books. I'm attracted to her novels, but I'm usually not super into them. So I was worried. I was all like, I don't know, especially because I ended up reading the synopsis of this and was like, oh no, hunty, this ain't for me. So we have a lawyer who has moved to a new area to start up her own practice. And right before she gets settled, she runs into a mysterious man, sparks fly, and she later finds out that he is a senator. And somehow they kind of keep in touch and decide to have a kind of undercover relationship, which I just was not feeling that synopsis. There are so many ways that that can go wrong and just not be enjoyable, but oh boy, did she do a good job kind of making it feel good in all of the ways. I ended up loving this. I loved it. I loved it so much. I ended up giving this 4 stars. Really enjoyed it. I had a good time. I liked the characters. I liked the romance and the chemistry, and I think they had a good way of kind of going through everything. So definitely enjoyable. Then next up, I actually think these 2 are kind of on a similar feels for me, but I don't know. Beach Read by Emily Henry. Didn't know what to think. I knew that this is polarizing for a lot of people. Some people love it, some people hate it. I didn't know what to expect, but I decided to go in with as open of a mind as possible. Now, one thing I have got to tell you is this cover is bullshit. Like, why? Why do they put this misleading title and cover? First off, yes, she's at a house by a beach, but there ain't no beach reading, baby. I do not understand why that is the title of this book. I do not know why the cover looks so cheery and happy and rom-com-y when this is a story about grief. It has a very solemn undertone behind it, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with this. I loved this book. But this cover just ain't it. It just really isn't. It should be a lot darker, maybe like mid-tones. It's not like a dark romance or anything, but like there is a strong topic of grief and betrayal and, you know, kind of working through your own shit and having lost faith and all of that. And the whole time you do feel a weight of that. Now, as I mentioned, I also read Instructions for Dancing, which had that similar topic, but this one had a much brighter tone to the entire thing, a more playful and cheesy and Hallmark-esque feeling, even though there were some darker topics. This one, on the other hand, felt dark. Not depressing. It definitely wasn't depressing. It's not that extreme, but it's just not this is what I'm getting at. Anyway, we have our main character whose father has just passed away. She has discovered some unpleasant things about him. She is struggling with money. She needs to write another romance, but she is not sure she can because she's also lost her faith in love. And she ends up running into a rival author who does kind of the complete opposite of her and who is also trying to write a novel. And after some kind of back and forth, they end up agreeing in kind of a I dare you sort of situation to write each other's genre. So he's gonna write a romance and she's gonna write a, I don't know, a dark contemporary biographical type of thing. It's not clear what he actually writes, but she's going to do something completely different from what she is used to. And they are going to try and train each other up, and, you know, in that process, they spend time together and obviously romance ensues.
I liked his character a lot, so I ended up enjoying it quite a bit. I do like the kind of dark and broody and Why when I'm trying to do these, do I just like lose words? Misunderstood. The dark, broody, misunderstood love interest is right up my alley. I did find our main female protagonist kind of annoying at times, and she did do some things that I was like, ugh, why? But overall, I still really enjoyed it and ended up giving it 4 stars. And then the last romance book that I read for that vlog was The Love Hypothesis by Ali Hazelwood. And this is a sunshine grump fake dating sort of thing. Not enemies though, I want to make that clear, because there is no real enemies going on. We just have a character that is misunderstood, grumpy, known to be unlikable by everybody, and a misunderstanding that leads them into this like fake dating situation that was just so enjoyable. I loved this book. I had such a great time. I really enjoyed it. I really liked his character. It was very cheesy and stereotypical and ridiculous and kind of over the top, and I did not like the sex scene. Just gonna say that. Putting that out there. I enjoyed the book a lot, but I hated that. They did some weird things that I was all like, is that supposed to be sexy? Because it ain't. But everything else was a fun time, even though I don't necessarily think it's a good book. I loved it, but it has some issues. Like, it has some problems. So be clear if you're going into this that it might not be your cup of tea, because it does have problems. But if you like that trope, that like sunshine, grump, opposites attract, you know, like the big, handsome, misunderstood guy, it's a good time. It is a good time. And then on to the POC fantasy books and a new favorite. So yeah, this was a fun time for sure. I'm actually going to talk about my biggest disappointment first, because I had such high expectations. So This Wicked Fate by Kaylin Bayron. Now, the first book in this series, This Poison Heart, I ended up picking for one of the first, I believe, POC Book Club's book picks, which is currently on hold. We are going to pick up. Don't worry. I'm just kind of working out some details. This was the first one. Absolutely adored it. I did have some feelings about one of the like relationship interests that ended up in the story. Still not a fan of that, still not my thing. And it does follow through into the other book. But the biggest thing for me is that I just felt like even though the pacing was good and you always kind of had something going on, not everything really felt like it was necessary or that it made sense. Some of it just felt pointless. And there was a lot of things that just, I don't know, it just let me down. Like, the stakes in the first book were so high and you felt tension and all of this, I don't know, just this excitement and craziness and big reveals, and it ended on this massive cliffhanger. And this one, I just felt like there were too many characters, there was too much going on, not everything made sense. You lost a lot of the like tension, and like there was just so much loss, and it was just so disappointing. Even though it's still a 3 stars, it just wasn't giving what I was hoping. Next up, I ended up reading The Wild Ones by Nafisa Azad, and this one is kind of like a feminist fantasy with these women who have all experienced like trauma and just unfortunate experiences and have pulled themselves out of that and kind of found themselves in this fantastical middle world in between our worlds and I think another world. And they coined themselves the Wild Ones. Now, I enjoyed this, but I did have some issues with it. The story is basically between the main Wild One and this boy, and kind of the relationship of how he gave her the power to be a Wild One and save all these other Wild Ones and all of these other things. And in between all of the chapters, you get the Book of Memories, which gives you a little bit of insight insight on what happened to the different wild ones that brought them to where they are going. So you just get these hints here and there, which I did think was really interesting. Overall, I just wasn't as invested as I wanted to be, and I was disappointed in the direction that the story went and kind of the conclusion, even though I did enjoy it to some degree. I just wanted something else from this story. I still enjoyed it. I think it's like a high 3-star, low 4-star. I was disappointed, but there were some things that I still liked. Next up, we have A River of Royal Blood by Amanda Joy. So I actually read both of the books in the duology, so this one and the book after it. This is a fantasy story about this world where the sisters in the royal family, when they come to a certain age, basically have to duel it out to figure out who is going to be the next queen. And beforehand, they're supposed to be learning their magical powers and basically training for this big fight off day. And we have our main character who still hasn't uncovered how to use her magical powers, because she ended up getting a kind of shunned power that she has been afraid of. So she's about to turn to the rightful age to kick off said massive fight. But some shit happens and she ends up learning some things about herself, uncovering her magic, dealing with a lot of stuff, and kind of going on this epic journey almost. And it ended up being a great time. I really enjoyed this book and was looking forward to the sequel. Once I got into this, I ate up the rest of it and hopped onto the sequel, and that was kind of a letdown, because even though it did everything that I wanted it to and it did have some enjoyable bits, it kind of was really slow and didn't do much in the whole middle part of the book, and then everything kind of happened too quickly at the end in a way that just wasn't as satisfying as I would like. So this one ended up being a 4 stars and the sequel a 3 stars. I still really enjoyed it. I still had a fun time. It is hard to talk about it because like there's a lot going on. Like this is kind of a convoluted book if you really think about it, but it did a lot of really cool things that I really enjoyed, and I do recommend it even though the second book was a little bit disappointing. I was happy with what it did and where it went. I just wish it did a better job of bringing me through that. Like I wanted the end to be longer. It was just all like blah 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 blah. Like that's what it felt like. And then the last book of the month, my new favorite, another surprise but in a positive way, and that would be Blood Like Fate, the sequel to Blood Like Magic. And now, admittedly, I enjoyed the first book in this duology, so I knew that I would probably enjoy this. But of these two, I definitely thought that this one was going to be more interesting and engaging. I just thought I would enjoy this one more, but boy did this one prove me wrong. So basically, the first book in this series is about a young black witch who has gotten to the point in her life where she is ready to receive her magical powers, which is kind of gifted after completing a trial from her ancestors. And in this world, blood is connected to magic. I thought that was fascinating and interesting and just a fun plot line to follow along. Now, our character, she gets a brutal trial where she has to destroy her first love or suffer dire consequences to her entire family. So there's a lot on the line, and this book follows through. Like, man, I will definitely say the beginning was a little bit hard. Like, it was a little bit difficult to get through, but like it was worth it. I ended up really enjoying it. I felt like there was a good deal of tension. There was interesting things going on. There were consequences, and you know, just like there was stuff, and I think it was done well. Frustrating, upsetting in certain situations, even, you know, annoying at times, but I think it just had me emotionally invested, and I think it was really well done. And then I will say that there was a big plot line that kind of happens that I'm not 100% sure about. I'm not. I think it's possible that in a second read of this, I might not be as happy with that, but I enjoyed it so much that part of me is all like, no, it's okay. Like, it's okay. It probably works out. There aren't gonna be holes in this, but part of me back here is all like, yeah, there probably are holes, because like that was a thing. But yeah, I ended up loving this. Highly recommend the duology, and I would love to know your thoughts on any or all of these books if you have read them, because yeah, this was a fun one. I got through quite a lot, and I would love to know if you've read them or just what in general you were reading in August. Do you have any new favorites, any big surprises? Let me know. And again, if you want to get your hands on any of these books, I will have them all linked down below, and using those links will help my channel at no extra cost to you. You can also become a channel bestie to help support the channel, or just check out my links in my personal link, which takes you to my website and all of my book wish list and or Patreon or my social media accounts, what have you. That's also one of the first links in the description box. But yeah, I really hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you stick around, and I will catch you in the next one. Until then, bye!